Question, Mr. President, 11 of your predecessors decided against going to Hiroshima. What do you know that they didn't? What were they worried about that you aren't? And just sort of generally on non-proliferation, because I think that's your focus and that's obviously a priority. For you, how do you communicate risks and concerns about this in a way that would do more to get it resolved? Because it seems to be getting worse. I mean, Americans worry a lot about terrorists with suicide vests. Which are unlikely events that can kill dozens. Do they worry enough about the risks of nuclear mishaps or attacks? Which are unlikely events that could potentially kill millions instead of dozens. In short, are we paying enough attention to Kim Jong-un and Pakistani tactical nuclear weapons? These sorts of things that you know are going on? President Obama, well, it's a terrific question. First of all, I won't characterize how other presidents were thinking about these issues. I can tell you how I'm thinking about it, and that is that the dropping of the atomic bomb, the ushering in of nuclear weapons, was an inflection point in modern history. It is something that all of us have had to deal with in one way or another. Obviously, it's not as prominent in people's thinking as it was during the Cold War. At a time when our parents or grandparents were huddling under desks in frequent drills. But the backdrop of a nuclear event remains something that I think presses on the back of our imaginations. I do think that part of the reason I'm going is because I want to once again underscore the very real risks that are out there and the sense of urgency that we all should have. So it's not only a reminder of the terrible toll of World War II and the death of innocents across continents, but it's also to remind ourselves that the job is not done in reducing conflict. Building institutions of peace, and reducing the prospect of nuclear war in the future. In some ways, we've seen real progress over the last several years. The Iran nuclear deal is a big piece of business because without us having to fire a shot, we were able to persuade a big sophisticated country that had a well-developed nuclear program not to develop nuclear weapons. The START II treaty that I negotiated in my first couple years. In office with the Russians has reduced our respective stockpiles. The Nuclear Security Summit and all the work that we've done on that score has made it. Less likely that nuclear materials fall into the hand of terrorists or non-state actors. And although we have not seen the kind of progress that I would have liked to have seen with respect to North Korea, what we have been able to do is mobilize the international community so that their proliferation activities are scrutinized much more carefully. And they have far fewer countries that are tolerant of potential actions by North Korea outside of their own program. Having said that, North Korea is a big worry for all of us. They're not at the point right now where they can effectively hit US targets. But each time that they test, even if those tests fail, they learn something. and it is clear that ideologically they are still convinced that, and Kim Jong-un in particular. Seems to be convinced that his own legitimacy is tied up with developing nuclear weapons. You pointed out the continuing tensions that exist in South Asia. That is still a concern. And we know that terrorist organizations would have no compunction about using a weapon of mass destruction if they got their hands on it. So we've got a lot of work to do. I think we've built up an architecture during the course of my presidency that has made a difference. That has focused attention on some key points of vulnerability. But we're not where we need to be yet. And obviously we haven't achieved all the goals that I set. When I spoke in Prague at the beginning of my presidency, of course, I noted at the time that I didn't expect to be able to achieve all those goals during the course of my presidency or even in my lifetime. And this is going to be an ongoing task, but it's one that I think we have to be paying a lot of attention to. Question, one follow-up. Mr. Kerry, your Secretary of State, called the North Korean nuclear program the biggest threat in the world, right? Now the gravest threat. Do you agree with that? Do you see this nuclear program as the worst thing going on? President Obama, well, it is not the thing necessarily that poses the most immediate risk. Obviously, ISIL using rifles and crude bombs can kill a lot of people in a Paris or a Brussels. And people are rightly insistent that the world community stamp out ISIL. So there's a reason why we are focused on that. But this is not a situation where we can afford to just focus on the short term. Over the long term, when you have such an unstable regime that is so isolated, that generally flouts international norms and rules more than perhaps any other nation on earth. That is also devoting enormous national resources hell-bent on getting nuclear weapons that they can fire long. Distances that poses the kind of medium-term threat that we have to pay a lot of attention to. And I assure you it's something that my administration has paid a lot of attention to. It's something that I think has been at the center of the trilateral work that we've done with our close allies in the region. It's something that we put at the center of our discussions and negotiations with China. And as I said before, what we've seen actually is improved responses from countries like China. Countries in the region, like Vietnam and Burma, taking these issues much more seriously because of our engagement. And so that may reduce the risks of North Korea selling weapons or fissile material to other countries. Or putting it out on the black market. But it does not, so far at least, solve the core problem of North Korea continuing to develop its program. And we're going to have to continue to work in a concerted way. In the meantime, I've been working with the Pentagon for several years now on making sure that we can develop the kinds of defense architecture that can protect the United States and our allies from an unexpected escalation. Carol. Question, thank you. You've said before that when you talk to world leaders, they often ask you about the presidential election. Can you give us a sense of the conversations that you've had so far, what they're saying to you? What you're saying to them, particularly now that Donald Trump is the nominee. And he recently said that Japan should pay for the US troop presence. But also, on the Democratic side, what they're saying about that and what you think of that. Because it's obviously continuing to be divisive, with Bernie Sanders saying he would take it to the convention. And he's endorsed your Democratic Party chair, her primary opponent. Should he change course? Have you decided that you're just not going to get involved until one of them concedes to the other? President Obama, well, look, the world pays attention to the U. S elections. They pay more attention to our elections sometimes than we pay to theirs. Because the United States is, as I've said before, at the heart of the international order. And even those countries that are critical of us. Even those countries that complain or question particular policy decisions that we make know that ultimately things don't. Hold together so well if the United States is not making good decisions. And count on us to provide a certain level of stability and direction in meeting global challenges. So they are paying very close attention to this election. I think it's fair to say that they are surprised by the Republican nominee. They are not sure how seriously to take some of his pronouncements. But they're rattled by him, and for good reason, because a lot of the proposals that he's may display either ignorance of world affairs, or a cavalier attitude. Or an interest in getting tweets and headlines instead of actually thinking through what it is that is required to keep. America safe and secure and prosperous, and what's required to keep the world on an even keel. With respect to the democratic primary process, as I've said before, it's been my view to let this play out, let voters make up their minds. And during primaries, people get a little grumpy with each other. It's just. The nature of the process. You start off and everybody is thinking, oh, this is fine. This is going to be a friendly competition, we're going to debate ideas. And somebody says one thing and then another person says another thing. And that felt a little sharper than I expected, and somebody's supporter pops off. And there's a certain buildup of aggravation. We saw that in my lengthy primary in 2008. This is no different. But what I think is really important to remember is that, unlike what you've seen in the Democratic or in Republican primary, for the most part there's not that big a difference ideologically in terms of the issues. Both Hillary and Bernie believe that every American should have health care. Both of them think that we've got to make college more affordable. Both of them believe that it's important for us to have a tax system that is fair. And that we should be closing corporate loopholes in order to pay for things like infrastructure investment and early childhood education.